Chapter 1 I Invented YouTube.com. I was finishing up some work on my website at Eberly College of Business Computer Lab at Indiana University of Pennsylvania in 1999 at 8 p.m. I was the last person to leave the lab, as usual. As I closed the door behind me, I saw a tall guy wearing a baseball cap with a bag slung over his shoulder coming in the side door of the building. There was nothing else open in the building but the computer lab, and he looked like he was in a hurry to get there. I said to him, "I guess you're here to use the computer lab. It closes at 8 p.m. It's exactly 8 now." He looked disappointed and tried to convince me to let him in. I think he thought I ran the computer lab. I said to him, "I think the computer lab in the computer science building is open till 9, but you might not make it there on time because it's all the way on the other side of campus. I come here to this computer lab all the time to work on my website because this is the best computer lab on campus, and I used to live across the street at McGregor Hall, so I know I can park over there." He suddenly got very interested. "You have a website?" he asked. "What kind of website?" "I want to start a website, but I can't think of a website to start. Can you give me a good idea for a website?" I said, "Well, my website's called GoGetItNow.com. It's an internet portal that combines the free search capabilities of Yahoo, the free web pages of GeoCities, and the free email of Hotmail into one interface. It gets as many as 10 million page views a day, makes as much as $5,000 a month, and it's doubling every couple of months." Now he was really excited. We introduced ourselves to each other. He told me his name was Chad, and he was a graphic arts major on a track scholarship, and he was graduating that semester. We talked as we walked to the front doors of the building. Chad persisted. "I've been learning HTML on my own in my spare time. If you could give me a great idea for a website, I'm sure I can make it work." We walked out the doors of Eberly and towards a yellow Jeep. "Is that your Jeep?" I said. He half-heartedly said yes, but I found out later it wasn't his. He borrowed it from his assistant track coach, somebody told me. "I love it," I said. "My stepdad has one just like it, but his is black. It might look better if it was black, but it's kind of cool and different. I'm driving that little red 3 Series BMW over there. But I'd much rather drive an American car. That Beamer makes me feel like a pretentious yuppie. I miss my Camaro I traded for it. I love cars, but I can't get into NASCAR. Isn't it strange how there's no Formula One racing team in America? When you get rich from this idea I give you, you should start a Formula One racing team in America." Chad said, "That's a great idea. I will. Now what's your idea?" Chad did try to start a Formula One race team in the U.S. like I told him to do, but he failed, as he failed with everything else in his life after the YouTube idea I gave him. I said, "I'll give you the idea, but first you have to promise me 3 things. When you're rich from this idea I give you, you have to let me hang out on your private island, ride around on your yacht, and I want 1% of the company." He said impatiently, "Okay." I repeated, "Now you promise to give me 1% of the company." He reiterated, "Yes, I promise. Now what's the idea?" I said, "Now pay attention. This is the most important idea anyone will ever give you. Just do exactly what I say and you will be successful." Chad eagerly said, "I will." I said, "Okay, in the future, television and computers with internet will become one. People will start using their cell phones to make videos like they are camcorders." Chad looked confused, and for good reason. At that time, they were just coming out with camera phones, and there were no video phones. There was a rumor of a cell phone that could take 5-second video clips of poor quality, but not many people knew about it except for those that kept up with such things like myself. And television and internet were considered 2 very different things back then. Despite his skepticism, I convinced him it would happen and continued. "When they take these videos, they're going to want to share them with friends, family, and the world." I said it'll be like everybody has their own television channel on the internet. YouTube allows users to share their videos and create their own channels, as I said to Chad. They would need a website to do that. It would be called something funny like Yahoo. What's a funny thing to call a TV? And then I was like, I got it, BoobTube. But you can't call it boobtube.com. That sounds like a porn site. I said, we'll take the word boob out and put in another word. The website is about people sharing videos, so put a pronoun in there. If you conjugate a verb, the pronouns are I, you, he, she, it, we, you, and they. And I said you twice. YouTube.com. That sounds good. Get youtube.com and the letter youtube.com. This was the first time anybody ever said youtube.com. I said youtube.com to Chad, the founder of youtube.com, in 1999, and he registered the domain name youtube.com about 5 years later in 2004. When Chad went to register the domain names I told him to use about 5 years later, the letter YouTube.com was taken by a tubing company, so he could only get youtube.com. We said YouTube back and forth to each other a couple of times and agreed it sounded great. I even said I can imagine the word tube with a television tube around the back of it for a logo, and that's the logo he uses. It's well documented that Chad said he used BoobTube, a way to refer to television that later became YouTube. I gave Chad the name YouTube and used BoobTube as a guide. He just pretended he came up with it. At this point, we were pretty excited about this YouTube idea. Chad anxiously awaited the rest of my idea. He was hanging on my every word. I said, now no offense, but you're on an athletic scholarship, not an academic scholarship, and you're studying graphic art, not computer science, at a low-level state school, not an Ivy League school. So the first thing you have to do is find some smart people to help you build your website and for credibility. I would help you and work with you, but I'm busy with Go Get It Now. You'll have to get a job in the .com industry. Do you have a portfolio of graphic designs you can send to .com companies to show them that you can design logos and graphics for them? He said, not really. I said, well, get really good at making digital graphics. There's this new program called Photoshop. Get really good at that. Chad promised me he would learn how to make digital graphics with this Photoshop program. So I said, go to Giant Eagle, the local grocery store, and grab the latest Wired magazine. There's a great article in there with a list of all the top up-and-coming website companies. Redesign their logos and send them to the companies. Make them simple and nice. It's well documented that Chad Hurley found his first job at PayPal in a Wired magazine. He sent a logo to them, a very simple logo, just like I said, and he applied and got a job at PayPal. They used the logo that he designed. So I said, when you get a job for a .com company, you'll need to find the smartest guys in the room to make the website, YouTube, and for credibility. It'll probably be a really smart Asian guy and a really smart Indian guy from top-level technology-oriented universities with advanced computer science degrees. So Chad got Steve Chen and Javed Karim, the smartest guys in the room, and just happened to be an Asian guy and an Indian guy he worked with at PayPal, and they helped him with YouTube. Those are his co-founders. I said, you'll need to beg, borrow, and steal money to get the website going and to keep it going. Finding the most bandwidth for the least amount of money will be a top priority too, because all those videos will use a lot of bandwidth. Chad got a lot of cheap bandwidth from a company in the area. YouTube was kicked off the servers when YouTube used almost all of the unlimited bandwidth. We started talking about ways to raise money, and I had another brainstorm. I said, while you're down at Giant Eagle getting the Wired magazine, grab the new Forbes list of the richest people magazine that just came out and make a list of the top richest .com guys. Figure out where they go. Go where they go. Do what they do. Get to know them. You'll need them to help you fund YouTube. And figure out if any of those rich guys have single daughters around your age. Figure out where they go. Start at the top of the list. Follow her around. Do whatever you have to do to get her pregnant and marry her. That was a shocking statement, and we had to stop and think about it for a while. It really is the best way to get rich. Get a rich girl pregnant and she'll most likely marry you. Despite it sounding sort of like a joke, we agreed he would have to do it, and it seems like he did. He crashed a birthday party for someone he did not know where a woman named Kathy Clark was attending. He went right up to Kathy Clark at the party. They are married with two children now. Kathy Clark is the heiress to the Silicon Graphics fortune. Her father, Jim Clark, was on the Forbes list of the richest people. He's also a venture capitalist, and I don't see how YouTube would have made it through the lean years without the help of Kathy Clark and her billionaire venture capitalist father, Jim Clark. Kathy would have been at the top of the list I told Chad to make. I said, some videos will get shared with others, and they will share them, and so on. There will be exponential growth. We didn't call it viral back then because there was nothing positive about viral back then. Everybody will get their 15 minutes of fame, and some people will become stars. YouTube did get big fast and grew exponentially as I predicted. We really started seeing how big something like this would be. I said, it'll take so much money to do something like this, you'll be able to make a little bit of money selling ads around the videos and in the videos like commercials. But you won't make real money until you sell YouTube to a company with more money than brains, a company like Yahoo. Google didn't really exist yet in our minds, although it was in beta back then. And if Go Get It Now is big enough by then, I will buy YouTube. Chad Hurley did sell YouTube to a company with more money than brains. That company was called Google, and he sold YouTube to Google for approximately $1.65 billion. I said it's going to take so much money you will need to constantly go around to venture capitalists, angel investors, banks, and anyone you can get to listen to you to raise money. But make sure you never give up controlling interest in YouTube. Give up percentages of the company for money, but never so much that you lose control of the company. Chad was able to retain 20% of the company, which was controlling interest. Steve Chen kept 19%, and Javed Karim got a small percentage since he left the company before it was sold. Chad was able to get approximately $330 million for the YouTube idea I gave him. Now I continued, when you ask for money from YouTube, you're going to have to tell them it's your idea or you won't have any credibility. They aren't going to give you any money if you tell them I gave you the idea. You're going to need a plausible backstory. Make up a story about how you and some friends were at a party, taking videos with your camcorders, and maybe the technology would be available to take videos with your phones by then. And you wanted to share them with each other, and you couldn't, so you created a website to share videos with each other called YouTube. So Chad still insists he came up with the YouTube idea when he, Steve, and Javed were at a party taking videos with their camcorders and phones and couldn't share them with each other, so they created YouTube. That's the exact plausible backstory I told Chad to use. Steve Chen and Javed Karim both said later that Chad lied about the story he told. There was never any party where they were taking videos. Steve and Javed said Chad made up the story. The actual story of how YouTube started is I gave Chad the entire idea, from domain name to exit strategy and everything in between. It is this story. By now, it was after 9 p.m. and all the computer labs were closed on campus. After the excitement of our conversation, I asked him where he hangs out in Indiana. He said he doesn't really go out much. He said they have parties in the cross-country house. I asked him when he was leaving IUP, and he said he was graduating this semester and he was just back to pick up the last of his things. He didn't want to hang out with me. He wanted to go to Giant Eagle and get started on YouTube. I reiterated the promise he made to give me 1%. He agreed he would fulfill his promise, and we parted ways. I never thought much about Chad and the 1% he promised me for the YouTube idea I gave him. I just worked really hard on Go Get It Now until two things happened that ended my dream. First, as I was trying to take Go Get It Now public, the .com bubble burst. Smith Barney called me a week before the meeting with them to go public and said they had to reevaluate .coms and basically they weren't interested anymore. Then my website went down. I called my server administrator, Chris, at CyberWorks in Atlanta, Georgia, and he said it was on Network Solutions' end. So I called Network Solutions, and after getting bounced around from one person to another, someone finally admitted to me that rogue call center workers at their Indian office were canceling domain names that were popular and renewing them privately. The company that took Go Get It Now is still in existence. It's called itssn.com. There was a class action lawsuit, but I don't believe it went anywhere because I don't think anyone knew who stole all the domain names and they couldn't be extradited. I didn't really participate in it. So I let my dream die and went back to college using grants and loans from FAFSA, free application from Financial Student Aid. I graduated from Indiana University of Pennsylvania with a degree in business with an emphasis in finance and computer science in 2002. I went on to become a financial advisor for a Wall Street firm, Merrill Lynch, but quickly realized that being a stockbroker was basically about helping rich people get richer. I wanted to help everyone, including those who needed the most help. So I transitioned into becoming a social worker and quickly realized you couldn't really help people because of all the bureaucracy. It was right around that time that I actually realized the guy I met and gave the YouTube idea to, Chad, was Chad Hurley, and that he did very well with my YouTube idea. So I started my own website to help people without the ugliness of Wall Street or the bureaucracy of social services. That website is called buckget.com. So when I heard about YouTube in 2005 or 2006, I thought, what a coincidence. I gave some guy named Chad an idea for a video sharing website called YouTube back at IUP in 1999. But I never could have dreamed it was that same dumb guy. In about 2011, my ex-girlfriend Corinne said something about YouTube, and I said to her, you know, I gave some guy named Chad an idea for a video sharing website I called YouTube back at IUP in 1999. He promised me 1% of the company, and now this YouTube thing is huge. Isn't that a wild coincidence, right? She said, Eric, you know the guy that started YouTube went to IUP, don't you? I said, no way. I didn't know that. Wouldn't it be funny if his name was Chad? So I went over to her computer and Googled something like Chad IUP YouTube. I couldn't believe it. It was him, Chad Hurley. I never knew his last name until that moment. He looked just like he did in 1999. He had long hair and was relatively tall and decent looking. I continued my Googling and reading. He went to IUP on a track scholarship and was a graphic design major. He got a Wired magazine, sent a logo redesign to PayPal, and got a job there. He partnered up with the smartest guys in the room, an Asian guy named Steve Chen and an Indian guy named Javed Karim. He crashed a birthday party to meet and marry Kathy Clark, the heiress to the Jim Clark Silicon Graphics fortune. He registered the domain name YouTube.com as a video sharing website in 2004 and launched YouTube on Valentine's Day 2005. YouTube got huge quickly as I predicted. He sold the YouTube idea I gave him in 2007 to Google, the company with more money than brains, for $1.65 billion. He did everything I told him to do. He even tried to start a Formula One race team. He promised me and owes me 1% of YouTube, and he sold YouTube for $1.65 billion. So Chad Hurley owes me $16.5 million. So I tried to contact Chad. I connected with him on Twitter, and I was blocked. I tried to friend him on Facebook. I was blocked again. I found his phone number and talked to his housekeeper. I think her name was Ann, for about a half an hour. She was very nice and said Chad would definitely want to talk to me about my new ideas. I emailed Chad at all his email addresses. I applied for jobs at Google, YouTube, Avis, Delicious, and all the companies Chad was involved with. I never got a response. I emailed Roloff Bota, one of the first venture capitalists to back YouTube. I don't think he believed me when I emailed the story of my involvement with YouTube. He thanked me for the color in the email I sent him. I don't think he believed me or even really wanted to believe me. So Chad never contacted me in any way. I searched the internet to see if there was any mention of me in YouTube. I found an old newspaper clipping that said YouTube was a play on words from BoobTube. Well, that's how I came up with the name. I found the story I told Chad to tell people about how he and some friends were taking videos at a party and couldn't share them with each other, so he created a website with Steve Chen and Javed Karim called YouTube. There was no mention of me, and why would there be? I told Chad he'd have to lie, and he did. My searching led me to a guy named Herb that said he invented YouTube, and we messaged each other for a while on YouTube. This guy was crazy. His story made no sense. He didn't really even have a story. But I found out Herb had an attorney in Pittsburgh. The attorney met with me and said he couldn't represent me because he already represented Herb. I said, why would you represent somebody who lied to me and not me when I'm telling the truth? He indicated it was simply a conflict of interest, but I should continue to try to reach Chad. I was never able to reach him. It was suggested I document my story, even write a book by some filmmakers, so that's what I'm doing. The rest of this book is about what Chad did after our conversation outside the Everly College of Business Computer Lab at IUP. My hope is that Chad will fulfill his promise and give me the 1%, or approximately $16.5 million, or now 1% of $100 billion company is $1 billion. Maybe Google could give me that. If he fulfills his promise or Google fulfills their promise, we can work together on other projects I have ideas for. And I may even make the real story take this story off the internet to protect Chad's reputation. If Chad doesn't want to work with me, maybe this story would make a nice documentary in the style of Social Network, and maybe I'll get what was promised to me anyways. So since I was laid off and trying to get in touch with Chad about YouTube and the 1% he promised me, I decided to start a new website called Bucket.com dedicated to helping people find ways to earn a living online. It's starting doing very well, very fast. Bucket.com had about 717,000 members in its first year. That's about as fast as YouTube and Facebook grew in their first year. While I worked on Bucket, I called around to see if I could get a lawyer to help me get in touch with Chad since I had no luck on my own. A really great intellectual property attorney named Louis Kreck said he would help me get the answer as to whether or not Chad was going to fulfill his promise and give me $16.5 million. So we sent a letter to Chad asking him to speak with us. We got a threatening letter from a high-priced law firm that represented Chad known as Wilson, Sonsini, Goodrich & Rosati. That's Google's trillion-dollar law firm. So the big question was finally answered. Not only did Chad not want to resolve this amicably, he wanted to throw insults and threats at me. He started tweeting things about how he thought I needed to get help and called me crazy. His attorneys asked me to cease and desist. Well, that just made me want to get the story out to everyone. So I registered domain names like IInventedYouTube.com, TheYouTubeGuy.com, WhoInventedYouTube.com, and put the story on those domain names. I put out a reward of $165,000, or 1% of my 1%, to anyone that could help me get the $16.5 million Chad Hurley owes me. I updated the reward to $1 million recently, and since I'm realizing that 1% of a $100 billion company is $1 billion, I'm considering upping the reward again to $100 million if we can go after Google for the 1% of the $100 billion company, or $1 billion. So I continued working on this book. Originally I called it You Screwed, the real YouTube story, but now I'm realizing I'm not really screwed and we're starting to dig up some proof. I'm calling it YouTube, the real YouTube story. So I got the custom plate in Pennsylvania that says YouTube and put www.the and then the plate YouTubeguy.com on the front of my car, and the custom license plate in Pennsylvania that says Buckget and put www.buckget.com on the back of my car. I wear t-shirts that say Bucket on them almost every day. Most people think Chad Hurley started YouTube in 2005 and sold it in 2007 for $1.65 billion. But I know Chad started working on YouTube when I gave him the idea in 1999 and fulfilled his contract with Google in 2010. So I'm giving myself the same 11 years to work on Bucket as Chad spent on YouTube. And now YouTube is worth approximately as much as $100 billion. So 1% of that would be $1 billion. So Bucket's doing very well, but I get little to no support from the Pittsburgh technology community, mostly because people don't take the time to really understand this YouTube story and automatically assume I'm lying. But I have truth, time, and the First Amendment on my side as I diligently work on Bucket and this story, the real YouTube story. And I'm planning a trip to Silicon Valley to see if I can make it there with Bucket, or maybe New York. But if I end up in Silicon Valley, I should do a little investigative reporting on Chad, YouTube, Google. It'd be irresponsible of me to write a book on Chad, YouTube, and Google without doing some hands-on research. So stay tuned for updates, and if you can help me and have the patience to listen to this, call me at 724-840-2654 with any ideas you might have. I'd love to give you $1 million. Thank you. EricSkaggs.com, TheYouTubeGuy.com, WhoInventedYouTube.com, IInventedYouTube.com, and the founder of Bucket.com.